I am so excited, y'all. We're going to have a great show today. Let's see. We're going to have Jenny. I know Jenny will be popping in here shortly. Um, we are going to get started. We are broadcasting live as well to YouTube. And I want to make sure I have this up because I just closed everything down to make sure that nothing was going to get in the way and then forgot to put it. Okay, there we go. All right. It is about that time. So welcome, everyone. It is Tuesday, May the 11th. I am Laura, the host of Alignment Vision Action here on Fireside, and I am so pumped about this conversation we're about to have today. Y'all have absolutely no idea. It's going to rock. So if you're watching on YouTube, we can't always see your comments on YouTube, but please feel free to leave them because I will come back and look at those later. But we thank you so much for tuning in. And for those of you who might be listening to the replay, be sure and send comments, let us know, because I always go back and look at those as well. So I'm going to introduce you to my amazing guest, Mica Anders. She is an artistic placemaker, a public artist, and a professional genealogist. She has an MFA in visual arts, and she enjoys combining her two passions, history and art, to create unique family history displays for her clients. And y'all, look, there are no words. I just can't wait for you to hear this. So Mica, y'all are going to get her whole bio. It's in the notes, the show notes. You can see all the stuff, but I want to spend all of our time in this conversation. So Mica, welcome to Alignment Vision Action.
Yay, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you.
I am too. This is going to be so great. So, I think what I want people to know first about this story is that, we often, especially as creators, so I'm going to take a little sidebar here and talk about creators, entrepreneurs, people who are starting their own businesses, trying to figure out what you want to do. And if you have a show, a podcast, a radio show, fireside show, whatever your thing is, are you always constantly looking and thinking about what you want to talk about, who you want to talk to, who's on your vision board? And so I have been talking about genealogy for a while. My mom has been doing a lot of exploration for quite a few years. And really, hey, Jenny, our producer Jenny's here. I think you can put yourself on the stage, Jenny, if you want to. And so we've been doing that for years. She's been looking. And so my brother and I had decided, you know what we want to do for my mom is we want to get her a genealogist. That's what we want to do. We want to have her do a genealogist. And so we all have ancestry.com. We've been doing the things. My brother and I did African ancestry DNAs, and we're going to talk about that with Mica here shortly. But, we couldn't really decide how we were going to do it, and they're so expensive and blah, 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 blah. And then I was listening to NPR, because y'all know I'm an NPR junkie. I was listening to NPR, and there was an interview with this woman named Mica Anders. And I was like, I like what she said. I like what she's talking about. And actually, the conversation was about altars. So it was around, I think it was it around, I may have been listening to it late, but it may have been around Dia de los Muertos. But it was around altars and creating those family altars. I was like, I need to talk to this woman. So I just sent an email that said, I heard you on NPR. I don't know if this is what you do. I'd love to talk to you. And then we got on the phone. I think we had like a 15-minute scheduled, and we were on for like an hour and a half or something ridiculous like that.
I didn't notice how long it had been either. We're just talking, having a great time.
It was awesome. And so long story short, she is going to do some stuff for my mom. So she does have a business, and we're going to have her talk about that so you guys know how to get in touch with her. But I want to go back and have her start with, so the point of that story was, if you see something or hear something or recognize something in someone, just send an email. The worst that can happen is they say no. The best that can happen is you meet an incredible human and get a chance to have an incredible conversation, right? So just reach out. This was your encouragement as an entrepreneur or somebody who's just trying to get somebody on the show. Just reach out, because all they can say is no, right? Or not respond. And then you're no worse off. What do they say? The only bad shot is the one not taken, or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So yep. Mica, I want to know, and I want everybody to understand, because it's such a unique background, this fine arts and then doing this genealogy research. Tell us a little bit about your journey from kind of this art thing into research around families and family storytelling.
Yeah. So I started off, so I'm going to just give you just a snippet because I'll
Yes.
just be like, wait, what? So I went to undergrad to become a pediatrician. So add that in the mix. So
There you
that's what I
go.
went to school for originally. I was going to be a pediatrician. Some stuff happened. I experienced some non-American medical systems. I said, I don't like the American medical system enough to
Yeah.
want to become a part of it. Um,
Ah,
and I'm
yep.
going to switch to art, which
Yeah.
wasn't as far-fetched as it sounds because I'd always taken all the classes,
Hmm.
drawing, painting. So it's always something I'd done. I always had sketches on
Hmm.
everything. Um, so undergrad did art, Spanish major. Then I went to grad school for photography.
Hmm.
And for my master's thesis, I decided I wanted to make quilts for my photography master's thesis.
I love it.
So obviously, boxes aren't really my thing. Don't stay in
Right.
them. They don't work for me. I kind of just,
Right.
I'm going to go the direction the world is sending me. That's where I'm going.
Yes.
That's what I'm going to do.
Yes.
So I decided for my master's thesis, I wanted to do the genealogy of 11 people. And I wanted to
Ah.
take their genealogy and I wanted to create these quilts because, right, in a lot of our families, we don't have thousands of photographs. We don't have
Right.
all these paper documents. That's not the stuff that we get. That's
Hmm.
not passed
Hmm.
down. We don't have that, but we have things.
Right.
We might have grandma's
Yeah.
quilt, grandma's teapot, something that did get passed
Yes.
down, but it's tangible things. So
Hmm.
I decided to use that concept to make these art projects. So I made these 11 really cool, they're called heraldic geneagraphs. That's what we
Ooh.
call them. So they look like family crests, but they have
Uh-huh.
the different ethnicities where people are from and all these cool
Yeah.
things. And so that was like my first blend of mixing
Uh-huh.
genealogy and art. And so I loved it. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've done my genealogy before. I've always liked my family history. That's interesting to me. But how cool was this to learn other people's and meet their
Yes.
ancestors? And all of a sudden, their family was my family,
Hmm.
and not only learning it, but giving them something back was
Yeah.
amazing. It was
Yeah.
amazing. Being
Yeah.
able to say, let me introduce you to your second great grandma Sue or whatever. And let me
Yes.
tell you about how cool she was and what her life was like. And seeing what that did for them, because these aren't people
Hmm.
who are really interested in genealogy. They're my friends. I just said, can I use you because you're my friend? And
Right.
it's really cool, right? Whatever.
Right.
So the the power that happens, right? The
Hmm.
that moment of reintroducing somebody to their
Yeah.
ancestors, letting them just absorb that and what that did for them and what that did for me, and
Hmm.
it was amazing. And I was like, I want to do more of
Yeah.
this. This is my thing now. I want to keep
Yeah.
going with this. So
I
yeah,
love
that's a
it.
very short version.
But what's so cool about that, and we talk about this all the time on this show, on everything that I'm on. It's like there are people. There's a percentage of people that know from the womb what they're going to do, and they are on that path, and it is their genius. It is their joy. The majority of folks, we take a bit, and we take these circuitous paths. I
Hmm.
mean, I did accounting to end up in HR. Now I'm doing my own business, right? I mean, come on, right? How many accountants go to HR? I mean, it's just I couldn't have planned it if I'd wanted to, right? And doing some of the things that I did. And so that idea of not only not allowing yourself to be boxed in, but to really hone into what feels right for you. And so I want to, before we dive into more of the genealogy, because that is such a key piece around the storytelling and stepping into our power and owning our strength. But when you talked about, I saw some things in the medical system. I knew I didn't want to be part of that in the US. I've always loved art. I really wanted to do something different. Often when we get those sentiments and those feelings of, no, I want to do this thing, right? And it's not traditional, or it's not, you get the whole, well, how are you going to make money doing that? That kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
How did you hear what you wanted, hear what your spirit was telling you to do, know what your gut was telling you to do? How did you understand what was just, I'm not sure, I'll just try something, versus, no, this is where I'm headed? How did you start to discern?
Yeah, so I think it starts with both of my parents. So both of
Mm-hmm.
them had a passion for something,
Mm-hmm.
eventually went a different direction, which was
Mm,
what most people do. But they told
mhm,
me from the first day I ever had a job, do what you love, follow your
Mm.
passion. It was just very important to them that you love what you do,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to be doing it a long time. So
Yes.
you got to love it. You're spending a lot of hours. It's the thing that most of your lifetime is dedicated to is your work,
Mm-hmm.
for better or worse,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. But so you've got to love it. And so I had that in me already. And I've also
Uh,
put that in my child. It was like, that's just,
mm-hmm.
it has to be a part of who you are. You have to love it.
Yeah.
Um, but the fear is there, right? So it's like, okay, let me
Mm-hmm.
start with this on the side. Let me start with something else primary and kind of shift them
Right.
around as time goes. So I didn't just jump in with 2 feet, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
just jump in with a toe either, right? So it's kind of
Right.
like, okay, let me just start with a few of my friends who were like, can you keep
Mm-hmm.
going? Those would be my first
Right.
clients. I'm still going to have like my regular job teaching art
Mm-hmm.
and making art and doing all of these things. But
Right.
let me just try it. Is there a need? Could I get some
Yeah.
referrals? But I believe, and this is also what it's like my mantra that I don't know where I
Mm-hmm.
got it from, but do good work and good work comes to you.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I
Do
don't know
good
where it
work
came
and
from.
good work comes to you.
I'm
Yes.
taking credit for it because I don't know who else said it, but somebody
Right.
else might have said it before me. So that's my thing, right? If you
Yeah.
put your energy towards what you want, if you put your energy towards who you want to become, the
Mm-hmm.
world really brings it to you. You just have to be open to receiving it. That's what I keep finding
Oh,
over and over and over is
yeah.
I'm going to try this thing. Oh,
Yes.
people are asking me to do more because I'm putting my heart, I'm putting my soul, my passion into it, and it shows.
See, and that's okay. We are going to get to this genealogy thing, but let me tell you, the spirit leads, right? Because here's the deal. If you guys are listening, I want you to not miss this. The power in her statement is we hear all these words now. Everybody's got a side hustle. What's your primary? What's your side hustle? How many side hustles? Hustle, 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 grind, grind, all this thing. But what you heard Micah say is, she knew and she didn't just step a toe in, but she didn't just go full bore. And the reason that first point is important is because everybody's journey to what they really want to be doing is different. It's different. There are going to be some people who, they do that full time job and they're always going to do that full time job because stability for them is number one. But that gives them mental, emotional, and psychological freedom to put 100% into their side hustle because they don't have to think about that paying the bills, right? That's one mindset. The other mindset is no, no, no. I want this to be the thing, but I also know I've got other obligations. So let me do it in a way that makes sense. And then you got the way risk takers that are like, I don't know, this is what I'm going to do, and we'll just see what works, right?
Yeah.
So listen to what she said, in as you're trying to figure out what you're doing, get really clear on your vision, and then decide what action makes sense for you. The second thing that I heard you say, Micah, is this whole idea of really stepping into what you love, right? And when you do good work comes to you. It's why I have such a hard time with that word manifest. It just flies all over me because manifest to me doesn't say action.
Mhm.
Manifest to me doesn't say you're doing any work. And what I heard you say, and what I want people to gather from what you said is no, be doing something and do it to the best of your ability, and more of that will come to you if you're open and being authentic and giving it all you got with all your heart. And that's important. That's so important. So you reached out, you got, first family and friends that are doing this, building your business, doing these amazing things. What made you then start to delve deeper into the genealogy side?
So, an art project.
Ah.
So I applied for an opportunity to make, of all things, a mini golf course.
Oh.
So I mean, it's all over the place. So
Right.
there was an opening for a new light rail in town, and
Mm-hmm.
they wanted artists to design mini golf holes, and I decided I wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
it. And of course, because I'm me, they both had a historical component to them.
Of
And one of
course.
them was about the neighborhood I actually live in called the Rondo neighborhood, which was
Mm-hmm.
the historical black neighborhood the highway went through, which is a nationwide phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called one of our elders and I said, do you still have a lot of pictures of people in community? I want to put these pictures on my mini golf hole. And he said, no,
Mm-hmm.
I donated them to the Historical Society. Call them. Cool. Let me call the historical society. I call the historical society. They say, we have them. We haven't cataloged them yet. So feel free to go through them. And not to keep them, but just like I don't have to go through the acquisitions
Right.
process or whatever.
Right.
So I go through them and I realize like these need to be properly cataloged. These need to be
Right.
put into the collections. These need to be part of the canon. This is community photographs. We need these
Yes.
online. So they got to know me really well. I volunteered to do that for them.
Mm-hmm.
And in that process, I realized on their website, and this is also nationwide, when there'd be a photo of an unidentified white person, it would say unidentified woman,
Mm-hmm.
man, child.
Mm-hmm.
When there was a photo of a black person on their website, it just said black man. There was no mention that it was unidentified. There was no need. Like, there's not even that language
Right.
says we don't need to know that person's name.
Right. Right.
And so they got to know me really well because I wasn't okay with that. And
No.
so I
Right.
said, who do I need to talk to? Who's in charge?
Yeah.
So through that process, I got to know the people in charge of the diversity department. Because
Mm-hmm.
obviously I was like, this isn't okay. You
Right.
need to change it. Whoever I need to talk to, I will change it. If you need me to go sit, I know how to do
Mm-hmm.
data entry. I know how to do
Right.
archival work. If you don't have the time, I will do it. They had the
Mm-hmm.
time and they made it happen. But
Right.
so they got to know me. And through that process, I started doing contract work with the Historical Society. And they
Mm.
had me do more genealogies for people. And I was just, oh, I loved it. I loved being in that
Yeah.
space. I loved being able to be around the history and learn the history and,
Mm-hmm.
learn more about the community, the Black history of the community I live in to this day. And
Mm-hmm.
just learn how to make sure more people know it, how to make sure it's
Yeah.
accessible, how to make sure that those stories do not get lost.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where the
Mm-hmm.
journey took me. And
Wow. Well, and that's so important now because I just, I feel obligated, right? Because to whom it's been a long week, y'all. To whom much is given, much is expected, right? And so I feel obligated to make sure that I am paying attention, I'm staying on top of things, all of those kind of things, because I have some public platforms that I'm out. I can't be just talking out of the side of my neck about stuff. And I just saw something the other day, speaking of, libraries and historical societies and all this, the folks going after librarians for simply having information available for
mm-hmm,
people to access
mm-hmm,
is beyond. I can't even say I can't imagine it would happen because it's happening. And now, talking about trying to erase history, this is what people do. That's what they do first, is they try to limit information and try to erase history. And now there's some legislation going around in Texas where, in the University of Texas system, that there will be punitive measures for the word racism being used. Racism. So if you bring someone who is a racism expert, you can't use that. Like punitive damages, firings, disciplinary actions, demotion. I mean, seriously, right?
wow.
Um, the fragility is real. The
Mm-hmm,
fragility is real. Of the grown folks. The young folks ain't got
mm-hmm.
this problem. It's the
They
the
really don't.
adults who need to just move out of the way and let folks who are reasonable do the work. And so when you're in there in this historical society and you're seeing all of this stuff, because it is, I go back and look at old pictures. Like I took all of my grandmother's albums and I took all the pictures out because they were crumbling, right? So I've got all the pictures out in the safeguarding, like the archival folders and stuff. And I haven't gone back and put those in place where they need to be. But she was of that age that they did a really good job of writing on every photo for the most part. There's still some that
Mm-hmm.
are missing, but that re-identification and reclaiming of family and of people as you're doing work with folks, how does that play into kind of what you're seeing and what you're feeling and experiencing with people, that reclaiming of self through the reclaiming of others?
It's it's really an honor to be in the room with people going through that process, right?
Mm,
It's amazing. To be able to give a story and then all of a sudden somebody's able to say, oh, that reminds me of this one thing grandma said this one time and I'd forgotten this
yeah.
thing and now I understand the importance of that random phrase and it makes so much more
Hmm.
sense. um or oh, grandma always said she had a brother but like we never could find him and you found her
Yeah.
brother. Like She could never find him, and grandma's no longer
Yeah.
with us, but like he's
Right.
back in the family now. Like we
Mm-hmm.
can say his name, we can find his descendants if he had any. Now, like you put back a piece of our family.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just tearing up thinking about it because I think about how my mom has looked for so long for some pieces and they just fall off. And going back to some of the old cemeteries, they went in Hampton, Virginia, they went to a cemetery that was just completely overgrown and covered over and was about to be plowed under. Again, that same story, right? And they finally were able to protect it from that. But she said you couldn't find headstones, you couldn't find nothing was
Mhm.
there. There were no records. The place that had the records had burned down, and all the things. And just to be able, as you say, to reclaim that name. A name is so important, that very existence. And I'm like on the bandwagon now. So every time I see something that just says black man, black woman, I will be writing to whoever it is and say,
Mhm.
absolutely unacceptable. I need you to fix that.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We
I'm
have
I'm I'm
to.
on the train with you.
Oh, yay.
Absolutely not. As of
I
this
love it.
day, no longer acceptable. So you have my commitment that when I see that, I will be saying something about that. Because you're right. It's like do you even exist? Right? Do you
Mhm.
even exist? And we do exist, and
Mhm.
we feel pain and we feel all these other things, and that's important. So now, you've started building this business of really helping people kind of reclaim their stories, right?
Mhm.
Realign with who they are. And when you and I were talking, we were saying, a lot of times people think about, their father's side and how that goes back. But if you think about, especially Black people, and how we were brought over, and then how the families were just burst apart. So usually it was the men that was then taken away, right? And how tracing it back, you talked a lot about how, actually the strength is tracing back the, maternal line. Maybe talk a
Mhm.
little bit more about that and how you come to that conclusion.
Yeah. So one thing that's really funny is in the genealogy community, I'll call
Hmm.
it, everyone always
Yes.
talked about the dad side, and oh, the family name takes the dad. And I said, actually, no, a lot of times our family names come from our moms. I have my mom's last name, my daughter has my last name, and you start looking in the records and over again, people will do their thing and say, oh, well, her last name says, her last name was Johnson, and so that
Hmm.
must have been her husband's last name. No, no, that was her parents' last name.
Hmm.
We are a matrilineal
Wow.
society, for
Hmm.
better or worse, because I think there's some bad things that have come of that in current day as
Right.
well. But
Hmm.
but knowing that is the first step to even knowing how to find our people,
Mm.
right? Knowing that
Hmm.
we're looking for moms,
Yep.
we're looking for sisters, we're looking for grandmas, we're looking for aunties. If you're
Hmm.
looking to figure out where did grandma go, she's probably living with one of her daughters. If you're looking for, sometimes,
Mm.
mom is off working, maybe she's a maid or something, right? If we go back far enough,
Hmm.
and she's living there. And so where are the kids? They're at grandma's. That's where they're listening to
Yeah.
this census. They're listening with grandma. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's generational. We are a matrilineal people.
I'd never thought about that. Again, see this, y'all, this is why you connect with experts. This right here is why you connect with experts. It, you're right, especially if you think about Black people, Latinx people, Indigenous people, when communities were broken, right? Or even if you think about, Appalachian, right? When communities were broken because men were out gathering, hunting, fighting, those kind of things, it was those maternal lines that really kept families moving, right? And I
Mhm.
hadn't ever put it in that context of, if grandpa died, if we knew who grandpa was, right? And knew where
Mhm.
he was, and grandma was still alive, grandma went with the daughter.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
the daughters had children, and she probably went with the daughters. I mean, it's been that whole matriarch, right? Taking care
Mhm.
of the family. And maybe that whole genealogy of, you teach a man, you lift up a family, you teach a woman, you lift up a community, right? Because it's a village. It's truly, linear that way. I love that. See, y'all, I'm learning stuff today too. So if you think about kind of that matriarchal line, and then moving into kind of this DNA piece, right?
Mhm.
So if we, in some cases, we have names that may or may not have changed, and then with spelling, and then even when you can read cursive, some of that stuff is hard to read, and people misspell things, and again, depending on who it was, they didn't really care, right? They
No.
just put something down that sounded right,
Mhm.
and now we have this whole thing on top of that with DNA to try to trace things back.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Um, because we had a whole conversation, y'all, as we were testing tech about DNA. And so, there's all kinds of opportunity to have your DNA tested in order for you to find answers to familial questions, answers to health questions if you want them, those kind of things. And one of the key things, like Micah and I were talking about, is one, read the fine print. Before you do anything, read the fine print, know what
Always.
they're going to do with your information, and then be prepared. Be prepared. So as you're working with people, talk a little bit about maybe when you suggest they think about doing DNA testing. Like if they've come to you and they're just like, look, we don't even know where to start. How do you suggest people think about it, use it, not use it? What is kind of your position on how we manage through this technology, right? That's now available to everybody.
Yeah. So for me, it comes down to a couple things. What are your goals, right? That's my thing. What are you hoping to learn through your time with me? If your
Yes.
goals are to get back through enslavement, we
Mm,
might need a DNA test
okay. Mm-hmm.
because might
Might.
might
Mm-hmm.
because now we're dealing with fewer records. In some cases, no
Mm-hmm.
records, but I prefer to say fewer because that's
Mm-hmm.
definitely false. When people say you can't do it, you can. It's
Yes, you
just
can.
it's difficult, but it is not
Yes.
impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So you might need it. Now, if you're dealing with something as straightforward as I don't know who one of my parents is, I don't know who both of my
Mm,
parents are, or I know I was adopted, one of my parents was adopted, one of my grandparents was adopted.
mm-hmm.
DNA is the only tool you have.
Right.
You know,
Right.
unless you have, I lied again. So no, because
Yeah.
I found an obituary
Oh.
for a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and and it said in the obituary, she was gifted a daughter. God gifted her with a daughter, and I wasn't sure about
Ah.
that language, but then I
Yes.
found in the husband's obituary that it said adopted daughter. So before that, we didn't even
Ah.
know that she'd been adopted
Ooh.
because there wasn't a DNA test. So in that case,
Ah.
now imagine had she taken a DNA test, and this is the daughter of that person, so it was her mom who
Right.
was adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Had she not known and she'd taken a DNA test, imagine.
Right.
So that's the other side of DNA.
Right.
That's the other side. So for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, her mom knew because it was in her,
Right.
but she didn't tell her daughter. So,
Mm.
so you have to be prepared for what you might find. I've had people
Yeah.
call me and say, I just found out I have a half sister. Can you help me figure
Mm.
out more? Obviously, they knew it was from one of her parents, but,
Mm-hmm.
or, I have cousins coming up who I'm not expecting to see, and
Me.
none of the last name from one of my four grandparents are showing up. Can you help me? So sometimes people come to me having
Right.
already taken a DNA test, and that's the whole reason is because
Mm-hmm.
it's not lining up.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, don't take one until you read everything, and
Ah.
know going in, and whether they read it or not, I don't know, but
Right.
and know going in that you may get a life changing piece of information. Some people
Yes.
are like, I'm ready, I want it, give me all the information, I want to know the truths, I'm prepared. Other people say, well, I'm
Mm.
happy with the family narrative I have currently. I'm going to
Right.
leave it alone.
Right. Right. And that is so true, because it's just like, we all have choices, and we are free to make the choices we want to make, but we're not free from the consequences of those choices. And when you start digging into DNA, you know, this nation has been around a long time, and there's
Mhm.
been a lot of stuff that happened from
Mhm.
its inception. And that stuff has a lot of stuff in it. And
Mhm.
if you're not ready to know it, much less be able to absorb it,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps waiting is
Yes.
the answer. And I think what's important about what you're saying is be okay with whatever answer works for you. There's no judgment.
Mm-hmm.
It's your story, it's your narrative, and you have to protect yourself, right? And what you're willing and able and ready to handle, and what you're willing and ready and able to do with the information that you have, right? So just be prepared when you get ready to start a genealogy journey that you don't know what you're going to find or what it's going to feel like or what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's hard to know.
It is. I had a family I worked with recently who's actually going to the family reunion for her mom's dad, whatever the line is,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right?
And it turns out that genetically they're not even of that family, because it turns out that that was her grandpa or whatever's stepdad. And I found
Wow.
that out through genealogy, not
And they
DNA,
didn't
just
know.
paper
Yeah.
trails, doing my work. But,
Yes. Yes.
and it's that moment when you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
so our family last name is,
Eee.
but
Yeah.
isn't.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
I think that at the end of the day, it is, because there's a reason that your, great grandpa or whatever took his stepdad's last name,
Yes.
because that's the man
Yes.
who raised him. So that
Yes.
is your family, just not
Exactly.
through a bloodline.
Right. And that's, I think, the thing. It's all about perspective, right? Because sometimes people make decisions if they do decide to adopt children, right? Which is a big decision and a beautiful decision if you decide to adopt, and they may or may not decide to tell the person for whatever reason, right? Um, People make the best decision they can with the information they have at the time, and so I think the challenge for anyone who's thinking about doing some genealogical research as well is trying not to make trying not to remake decisions or judge past decisions on today's information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right, there's so many bonus moms, bonus dads, right,
Mm-hmm.
who adopt kids or really do rear kids from infants, and that's their child. As far
Mm-hmm.
as they're concerned, that's their child. Blood doesn't matter. It's their child. And so
Mm-hmm.
the heart and the belief and the love is there, even if the bloodline is not. And so as we dig into these things and start to tell these stories, being able to take all of that information and convert it into a powerful story for yourself, right, is the key. And so when somebody comes up on something, or you find something through the records, or they do DNA and they find something that's kind of difficult or something, how do you guide people into taking back the power from the information? Because it's just information. It's just
Mm-hmm.
facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
The narrative you tell yourself is something different, but the facts are just that. It's information.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help people then, marinate and digest and write that story for themselves based on new facts that they
Mm-hmm.
may or may not have known?
Yeah. So for me, kind of like you said, I always tell people you can't put 21st century logic and mindsets
Mhm.
into sometimes 19th century,
Yeah.
20th century, ways of being
Yeah.
in the world. The other thing I always tell people is, nothing that happened then isn't, first of all, still happening now. Um,
Yeah.
but, people were doing their best.
Yes.
People were doing the best with what they had.
Hmm.
They were doing their best with the choices they made. Now, we might not think of it as a good choice sometimes. We might not think that was the best option they could make, but there were
Hmm.
different societal pressures. I always say you almost do have to learn more about what was going on in that time period, what was going on in
Yes.
that community, what was going on economically, what was going on ethically, what was going on
Hmm.
racially, and really understand why would somebody make whatever decisions that they made,
Mhm.
why would they
Mhm.
just leave their family? Why? And some people were just
Right.
kind of weird people, let's be clear.
Yes,
And
of
that
course.
happened then, and that's happening now, and that will always
Right.
be. People up and leave
Always.
their families. That's not new.
Yes.
That's been going on forever.
Correct.
And but then we think, okay, what happened in their lives that
Right.
made them the kind of person who would make that choice?
Right.
And
Right.
And sometimes doing their genealogy, we learn, oh, well, grandpa or great grandpa, he left and he started a new family. Oh, wait,
Right.
but his mama had just done that same thing to him. And oh, wait, but her son, like you start to really look and you see my daughter's
Exactly.
new word. I don't know why she's 13. She keeps talking about,
Hmm.
is that a mommy issue? Is that a daddy issue? Is that generational trauma? I was like, what are you guys doing in school right now?
Right.
Like, is this a health class? I don't understand what's going on in seventh
Right.
grade. But that, I mean, it comes to mind. So now I'm like hearing her little voice as I say that.
Yes.
But it's like, okay, when you think about the person in your family who may have been an alcoholic or the person, and then you start to think, oh, wait, but so was their dad, but so was their dad. So you also give grace. And that's something I always tell everybody is
Yes.
you have to give grace. We,
Hmm.
even through just learning records and doing DNA, we do not know their full story.
No, we
And
don't.
and most people aren't just bad people. Something
Right.
happened. They have their own traumas. They have their own
Hmm.
whatevers that there's your generational trauma, like my daughter always talks
Yes.
about, right? And it's something
Yes.
happened to them, and they're either going to repeat it or they're going to stop it.
Yes. Yes. And that's it is so powerful. I mean, we look back and we've, on my dad's side, but even it's really even that is really through the maternal line, not through the paternal line, where most of the work has been done. Um, and we look back and we have, the first black blacksmith in San Marcos, Texas, right? The only who did amazing things, right? And died only owing for a keg of nails, right? The stories, right? That we heard, used to make us walk all the way to town to see how much the shoes cost, walk all the way back and get the money, go buy the shoes, and then come back and bring them as change, right?
Oh my gosh.
All the things, all the things. But also, the strength and resilience and um, some of the thought processes and things that they would say that we look at now and we're like, what? He
Mhm.
just drove up and said, "We're getting married today," and then you just left. I'm confused, right? That
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
I don't understand, right? But then putting yourself back in to that time frame where there was not only different cultural expectations, but societal expectations, gender expectations,
Mhm.
lifespan expectations, right? It was very different. And while what I love about genealogy in helping us ground ourselves in a real strength of story of our very existence and resilience to still be here, right? If you're able
Mhm.
to go do a genealogy, story, that ability to do that in and of itself is phenomenal, right?
Mhm.
Phenomenal. And that you're here to be able to do that is absolutely
Mhm.
incredible.
Mhm.
And it is so important to recognize and honor that the madness in the stories is also the strength in the story, because we
Mhm.
sometimes take the things that are like, oh, I can't believe that happened, and we want to bury it again. And I
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
being ready to have someone like Micah do some work with you and for you is being ready to claim all of it, all of it, right?
Mhm.
The good, the bad, the ugly, right? The 400 kids and the 1,200 cats, right? All of it,
Yeah.
because it's all generationally bringing you to where you are now. And by knowing the whole thing,
Mhm.
then you can choose what you internalize. You don't
Mhm.
have to throw out the whole story, but you also don't have to internalize all the bad. But knowledge is power. Knowledge is
Absolutely.
power, right? So
Mhm.
how do you, because I normally try to give people about 30, 45 minutes because, people's attention spans are short. Mine is too, but I could talk to you for another 4 days. Um, so before we let people know how they work with you,
Mhm.
give people a little bit of information around, if you are really serious about genealogy, because there's people who really want to do DNA because they're trying to find an answer to a family question. But then
Mhm.
there's genealogy searches, which, yes, it's family stuff, but for me it feels like those are two different, like, impetus, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
What do you, when you're talking to people, how do you guide people and understand, is it DNA, is it genealogy, is it a little bit of both? How do people start discerning what they're really trying to do?
I think it really comes down to, like I always say, what are you looking for?
Mm,
So some people say, I just want to take a DNA test. I want to know what percentage I am of this and what percentage I am of
mm,
that. And then they walk away. I got
Mm-hmm.
what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Right.
Other people have a specific family story, right? I'm
Mm.
only worried about my dad's mom. That's the only person
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about. Everybody else, that's cool. She was important to me. I just want to know about her.
Right.
That's different than somebody who says, I want to know who I am. I want to know who I
Mm.
come from. I want to know who enslaved my people. I want to know when people crossed an ocean. That's a different group of people. Now,
I got chill bumps when you said that. Who I am. I want to know who I am. Like I'm tearing up again. Yes, ma'am.
yes. Yeah. But it's sometimes you start being a person who just took a DNA test to learn your ethnicity
Mm-hmm.
and it gets you, right?
Yeah.
It hooks you in. You say, oh, okay, well now I know I'm this percent this and this percent this and this percent this. But like those were people, right?
Yes.
Those, yeah,
Yes.
the numbers and it's a pie chart and it's pretty, but those were all individual people. Like if you are 50% something, that's one whole person. That's one of your parents,
Yes.
right? If you
Yes.
are even like 12%, that's a
Mm-hmm.
okay, and I can't remember. I think it's a second great grandma. Like that's a whole
Right.
person, can be a 12%
Yes.
person. Maybe a great grandma. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Right.
So when you start to change your mindset and you're like, wait, but these are people. Okay, well, who was my person then? Who was
Mm-hmm.
my person that was whatever that ethnicity is? Who was my
Yes.
person and how did they get to me? Right? Like
Yes.
what happened that made them part of me? And that's how
Yes.
sometimes people start just wanting to take a DNA test. Or all of a sudden they get
Mm-hmm.
some cousin matches. They're like, oh, they've got my same last name. Oh, but wait,
Right.
your family's from the same town. Oh, but like I never knew those people. Like, how do I
Right.
figure out how those people connect to me? And you all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden you're doing the work of learning who you are.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that so much because it's, we love South Carolina. And so we did a really big family tour of South Carolina. And of course, there's a Rutledge on the who signed the Declaration of Independence, right? And there's a Rutledge House that's in South Carolina. And, all of these things. And we have all this English stuff, but then we had all this other thing that said Spain and Portugal. And so my brother and I actually did the African ancestry. And it did say Spain and Portugal and then Sierra Leone. And we just FYI, guys, we did the African ancestry because they don't sell your information. So again, read the fine print. Do you? I'm not bashing anybody. I'm just saying know what you're signing up for and be prepared. As Micah said earlier too, please be prepared. We want, if you get nothing else out of this, know why you're asking the questions you're asking, and then be prepared with what decision you make on how you're going to get to the answers. That's all we're saying. We just want you to be prepared. Don't want you to be blindsided. Um, how do people work with you? And I want you guys to really listen to this because again, we've been wanting to do this for my mom for a long time. And you see Henry Louis Gates and who do you think I am and all these kind of things. And you feel like you got to be, a millionaire to get anybody to even look at your stuff. And then got to wonder how much you're really seeing of that when it's on TV because it's got to be made for TV. And then I found Micah just listening to NPR and listening to a zone where I am and got a chance to meet with someone who believes in helping regular people do this. So how do you work with people? How can they work with you? And we'll
Yeah,
put this
so
in the show notes too.
my company's called Anders Genealogical Services, which nobody can spell, so that was a good. That was not smart on my part.
Right.
The thing is, most people don't even know the word genealogist.
Right.
It's not a word that we just throw around in regular
Right.
vocabulary. So, um, I'm a member of the Association of Professional Genealogists, but again, like it's still a world that isn't really giving us access points to be found.
Yes. Yes.
So I think the big thing is, people who watch Finding Your Roots and shows like that, and they're like, I want that. There's people who
Yes.
do that. We help with
Yes.
that. We can give you a similar experience. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it probably would be $1 million experience to do all of what they do with people
Right.
in the world. And all of a sudden, oh, and my researcher in
Right.
Sierra Leone just started like, no,
Right.
I can't do that part for you. But I can
Right.
do some of the work.
Yes.
But that's how you find me. I'm on social media and I have my
Mm-hmm.
website and email and all of those good things. And
Yes.
there's genealogical services on all the platforms. But yeah, even figuring out that there's a thing called a genealogist. And if you have friends who are
Yeah.
just like, I want to know more about my family. There's a thing called a genealogist.
Yes.
You can work with them and they
Yes.
can help you.
Yes. Yes, because it can get so discouraging, especially for people of color, and in particular for Black people because of the enslavement issue, right? And
Mhm.
so getting through those records, finding the records, how many, libraries do you have to go to? I swear we were in Richmond and then we were in Maryland and then I mean, it's all
Mhm.
over. And
Mhm.
you're going, if you don't have any knowledge other than a few names, but no real research expertise, right? And no real knowledge of how it all works, it can be so discouraging and disheartening. And so I encourage you, if you're listening to this, right, and if you're seeing this, watching the replay, whatever, one, I encourage you to reach out to Mica because, as you see, she's just amazing. Reach out to Mica at Anders so you
See?
can't even, not only spell it,
And I was like, when we do a rebrand, I might be changing my name.
right? AGS, right? Anders Genealogical Services. Reach out to her for sure. Because you want someone who is as invested and interested in your story as you are. And that's the thing I think we sometimes get caught up in because, things like Ancestry.com and all those places you can get a genealogist through there. But as Mike and I have talked about before, if you are a person of color, it's hard work to do a lot of hours. So is that person going to be as invested in doing the hard work of the genealogy for lines that are going to take much harder work?
Mhm.
Um, there will be some that
Or
are,
or
many
do they
more that
even
aren't.
understand the nuances? Because
Yes,
it's not just records on a paper, and
yeah,
you can't just tell somebody, well, here's this. Like, if you're just calling people slaves and you're just like not even
yeah,
using appropriate language, or oh, that was just a
right.
bastard child, and it's like you can't say stuff like that, or oh,
No,
those are hard names to pronounce. Like,
yeah,
no, that's not okay.
no,
You can't say stuff
no,
like that.
no. And if you get that, if people are giving back to you things like that, move on. Don't
Correct.
even spend your money. Ask lots of questions. Ask for examples. Tell me how you go about doing these things.
Mhm.
Have you done this for other people before, right? Really be discerning because just like Micah said earlier, this one just says Black man, Black woman. That's not okay. It's not okay to say, oh, it just says slave,
Mhm.
woman, colored, right?
Mhm.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Mhm.
The answer is no. Right? Keep it
Correct.
moving, right? Go
Every
find
time.
Micah. That's what you need to do, right? Go find Micah. So I want you guys, alignment, vision, action is just something I truly believe in. Getting really aligned with who you are and where you are, understanding what it is you want, and then taking action, empowered action to get there. And in my mind, Micah embodies all of that. She took this thing that she loves, this art and this storytelling and this history, and connected it with an ability to help other people find their stories and to be seen and to be visible and not to be lost, not to just be that unidentified Black woman or Black man, but to actually have a story and connect. And she is the epitome of alignment, vision, action. And so I am so thankful, Micah, that you agreed to be on the show, that you answered my email from NPR. So grateful, grateful to be working with you as well. Because full disclosure, she is going to do some stuff for my mom that we're so excited about. Um, but I am just so grateful and for your expertise and your reassurance for people that it is possible to find your story.
Mhm.
It may be hard, but it's possible. And you are so full of possibilities. And I think bring that to the table when I think so many cases people say it's hard and they just stop. And your words, right? That it's difficult, but it's not impossible. It's
Mhm.
not impossible. And so I want to leave everybody with that. And I thank you so much for your time and for your energy, for your expertise, for being on the show.
Absolutely. This has been really fun. Like you said, we could keep talking for hours.
We could. We could. We're
Thank
gonna have to
you.
do it again. I feel like I need to get
Absolutely.
like a panel, right? And like we'll all like do our
Ooh.
our mica trees, and then we'll have like a sip and see, right?
Oh, I would love to do that. Oh, that'd
Yes,
be really
yeah.
fun.
I just think that would be so awesome. So we might want to just. I'm gonna write that down. So
We might have just come
we're
up with a
gonna.
new business idea.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, just like a a retreat, genealogy retreat, right? Where you go over your things. So yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Well, tune in. We're going to be here not next week, but the week after on Alignment Vision Action. And we're going to be talking about something totally different. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity
Oh
and
wow.
what you can do, especially as small business owners. So join me back. It's going to be noon. I believe that's the 25th. All my dates are starting to run together. The 25th, that's at noon Central on the 25th of May. And Brian is going to be my guest there talking about cybersecurity. He comes out of IT and things we need to watch, especially as solopreneurs and especially as we're our own IT people, right? We don't have the big IT departments behind us. Some things we just need to watch out for as we continue to ensure that our brands are really reflected in the business that we do. So thank you guys for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. And we will catch you in a couple of weeks. Take care. Thank you, Micah.
You're
Talk to you
welcome.
soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.